I've pretty much come to a conclusion that single leg work is great for all the reasons that narrow stance squats are not. So if you're going to narrow stance squat, narrow stance deadlift, if you're one of those conventional guys that pulls with really, really close heels, if you're somebody that squats with a narrow stance like me, that's all well and good. And there's many reasons why that is a good stance to go for. But it does leave certain musculature untouched. And that musculature basically gets addressed when you do single leg stuff, like a single leg deadlift, RDL, pistol squats, lunges, or even dragging a tire or a sled or something like that. That's a great way to address that because, like I mentioned in yesterday's video, people have trialed this. People have trialed single leg work, like lunges, like pistol squats, like I mentioned yesterday, of the guy who went up to 140 kilo freaking pistol squat. So front squat, pistol squat. And he found no carryover to his bilateral squat, so his normal squat. And that was really, really interesting. And basically the conclusion there was that his adductors got no work when he was on the single leg. What did get a lot of work, and what I found as well, is that when you're on one leg, you're addressing the lateral part of the hip, the glute medius, the glute medius, minimus medius, and the TFL, the whole kind of abduction, let's say even the external rotation aspect of the glute max, that gets addressed really, really well. But the reason why it doesn't get carried over well to the bilateral squats is this idea of adductors being the gatekeepers, the really secret weapon when it comes to squatting and deadlifting. The adductors are massive. A lot of people don't, I guess bodybuilding doesn't like, let's say, it's not aesthetic as quads and hamstrings and, glutes or whatever. But really, if you're into squatting, the adductors are huge. But what happens if you say to yourself, okay, so I need two lifts, so I need a single leg and I need a narrow stance squat to address all of the components in my hips, in my leg musculature. But what happens when you sumo stance anything, whether it's a really wide squat or whether it's a really wide deadlift stance, like a sumo deadlift? What happens there? What's going on in that position? Well, this is what the thought process led me to this morning. So what happens in a wide stance is that clearly the pistol squat muscles, let's call them that, are very much engaged because we have to spread our legs. We have to spread our knees. And the musculature that's responsible for that is the side of the hip. Like I mentioned, the medius, minimus of the glute, TFL, all of that is involved in spreading your leg to some extent. Like if you just sit there right now listening to this video and you spread your knees apart, right? You push your knees apart. What do you feel? You feel side of your hip. You don't feel your adductors, you feel side of the hip. So that's a given. The pistol squat muscles are being addressed in the sumo. But what happens with the adductors? What do the adductors do? Well, because we are in a bilateral stance, we're not on one leg, automatically adductors become involved. So what is the conclusion here? I guess you guys can see where my thought process is going. The solution is, yeah, you can do single and narrow, or you can just bloody do wide. Just do one exercise, do wide. Which exercise? Doesn't really matter. Just do something wide. Squatting is difficult. I feel like sumo is easier. Sumo deadlift is easier. The reason why squatting is difficult, especially for somebody like me, is because I have a tendency to want to go ATG. Going ATG with the sumo stance or wide stance squat is basically asking for a hip dislocation. You can't really go very, very deep. Your structure just limits you at a certain point, basically around 90 degrees or around parallel to the ground. You kind of, depending on your hip structure, you kind of get stuck around that period. I'm sure there are guys out there who can really go all the way down with a really wide stance. But if you really load that, like if you just look at the skeletal structure of humans, like we're not supposed to go ATG with a really wide stance. I mean, that's asking for a lot of trouble. So there you go. I've naturally come to a conclusion that, okay, I can do single leg RDLs, I can do single leg stuff, lunges, drags, all that sort of stuff, or I can just simply do sumos. Now, there are some things that sumos are not the greatest at when you compare to single leg stuff. Number one, sumos or wide stance you're not getting the benefit of using your whole body for one leg. So one of the best things about single leg stuff like lunges and like single leg deadlifts is that you can use half of the freaking weight. In most cases, even less than half, to get the same type of stimulus, to get the same type of working weight. So if you want to do, bilateral squats, you're using 180 for sets of 5, whatever, you can basically use 100 kilos in your split squat and you can get a freaking amazing workout. So you don't get that when you're using bilateral stand stuff. You have to pretty much use the same type of weight. For some people, some people get even stronger in wide stand stuff. This is all coming from a perspective of me, my case study. My case study is, like I said, everything I do is freaking narrow stands. My squat is very, very narrow. A lot of you guys have said, I don't know how you do it. I don't know, it feels comfortable like that. And my deadlift, once again, sometimes freaking even narrower than my squat. It just feels so much more comfortable like that. So when I think about that process, I'm like, okay, why am I comfortable in that position? What am I hiding? Because comfort is a nervous feedback loop mechanism where you want to go where you are strongest. Comfort is not going to a place where you're going to be exposed, where you're going to be cold, where you're going to be hot, where you're going to be in a position that doesn't suit you. So that's what comfort is. So I'm comfortable in a narrow stance. So what is it about the wide stance that makes me uncomfortable? Surely it's some sort of freaking weakness, man. I mean, there's no two ways about it. I'm hiding from something. So if you continuously are doing things which are comfortable, you are continuously not training the things that need to be trained. This is something that I continuously bang my head against the wall, and I get frustrated at myself for doing these things. But I don't know how many times I've said, I need to do wide stance. And if you think about the mechanism behind me feeling so well this year with the bodyweight squats, I don't bodyweight squat with the same narrow stance. That's without a doubt. I can't narrow stance bodyweight squat. I can't do that. Usually it's a fair bit wider, right? So that wide position done for thousands of freaking reps has led me down a path where I feel comfortable. I feel good. I feel balanced, right? I'm using no weight. I'm using bodyweight stuff. But after I've done that uncomfortableness of that exercise, I walk away and I feel really comfortable, if that makes any sense. I feel complete. I feel like I've done a really good thing. My hip pain stopped, right? As soon as I started this year of going after freaking high rep stuff, my hip pain stopped. And the number one example of that is I did 31 days of hitting 200 purely. I don't even want to say that I got stronger. Purely, that was a celebration in my eyes. It was a celebration that I am healthy. And that to me is such a beautiful thing. Screw any PR. Screw any progression, any gain. Man, I just want to be freaking healthy, man. I don't want to be in a car up for 30 minutes and I'm freaking screaming. My hip is locking up. I am in so much freaking discomfort. It's getting to a point where it's flat out painful. Okay, that was the worst point of my time with hip pain. Yes, I've been doing this for 3 years now, freaking squat every day, and a lot of guys are like, oh man, you should be squatting 2 tons by now. The story has been played by my arch enemy, which has been the right hip pain. And every time I made any progress, anytime I hit it with any meaningful freaking volume, I paid for it basically with weeks on end with pain in the hip. And yeah, stop. My gut feeling has always been it's not something structural. Like I know for a fact it's not structural because I can alter, I can improve the feeling, the state of my hip purely by exercise choice. So when I did things like this, like I said to you, wide stance stuff, I feel great. When I did lots of pulling, I felt great. Any time I went after my high bar, my normal freaking stance squat, when I went after it hard, lots of volume, pain. But when I go after it hard with wide stance, no pain. Do 3 months of that, I ended up doing 31 days of hitting 200 for a single every day. So this is where my thought process is coming from. Simply from a place of, I am missing something. If you are continuously waking up every single day and you're just coasting and you're comfortable, just generally speaking from a life perspective, I said to you many times, I've spoken to a bunch of people, and I've said this a bunch of times, every single day that you wake up, you have to think to yourself, whereabouts in today's schedule can I insert some discomfort? I'm a true believer of that, because that discomfort is how you grow. That discomfort is a palate cleanser for everything else that you experience as comfortable. And we, for the most part, live a very freaking comfortable life. Our ancestors are freaking laughing at us. They're freaking laughing at us how easy we got it. And here we are complaining. So zooming back into the training aspect, if you're always doing what's comfortable, you're not growing. Now, you could be working hard in that comfortable zone. Don't get me wrong there. You can do that. But for every hard point that you work hard, you're getting 1 point back of results, right? Let's just say that. But when you go into the realms, into the ranges of motions, into the positions, into the stances which are uncomfortable, for every point of working hard that you do, every unit of time that you insert there, you're getting 3 back. That's how it is, because you're addressing the weakest link in the chain. And that's how I think about this. And so there's patterns here. I'm picking up patterns here. When I do single leg stuff, I'm hitting the stuff which I feel like is making me feel healthy. When I do wide stand stuff, it's making me feel healthy. So what is the connection between single leg stuff and wide stand stuff? The lateral hip. It's all that glute med, minimus, TFL, all that stuff. Probably even the anterior fibers of the glute max. Anything that's got to do with abduction and external rotation. Feels freaking amazing to me. So today I did sumo. I'm not really good at sumo, of course. But it makes sense. It makes sense. And part of this whole deload is me experimenting with these ideas and me essentially confirming the fact that those bodyweight squats that I did earlier part of this year are everything so far this year. Everything that I've done good this year has been based upon that one little change. I appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.